Well, I bet you've seen that mortgage rates have gone up. And the question we're being asked is, how are the rising mortgage rates going to affect my investment property? Well, let's take a look at that today, because higher mortgage rates do mean higher costs, but you still want to have positive income on your rental properties. So you've got to calculate properly to make sure you've got the right cash flow. Let's take a quick look at this graph here that is going to show how mortgage rates have allowed us to have low cap rates or rental profit rates for the last several years. You can take a look here at the blue line on the graph, and it shows that we've had relatively low cap rates of 5.5% all the way down to about 4.5% cap rates have been going on for several years. This graph goes back to about 2014. But you can see the orange line, which represents our mortgage rates. They came up a little bit in 18-19, then dipped way back down again. And look at how they've shot up recently. We've gone from in the low 2s all the way to 6% average 30-year mortgage rate. Well, a higher rate like that means higher cost on your note, which means you'd better get the rents to do it. Now, part of the problem that's causing this is our inflationary cycle that we're in. But the good news is, if you own rental property, inflation has impacted rents also, and rents have gone up. And that means cash flow. So let's take a look at how these mortgage rates are going to affect any property that you might be acquiring. Now, we could get into the complicated formula for cap rate. And if you're not sure what cap rate is, well, it's probably the only algebraic equation that I actually know. And it looks something like this. I over R equals V. I means income. R means rate, and that equals value. Now, general rule of thumb on cap rate is you always want your rate to be about 2 points higher than your mortgage rate. So if I've got a 6% rate, I want an 8% cap rate. That gives you a pretty simple rule that's not guaranteed to give you cash flow, but it's a greater chance to make sure you've got positive cash flow. Now, if I was really going to do a full-scale cap rate equation, I'd have to take my gross rents, and then I'd have to subtract my expenses, and I'd have to back all this out to get my NOI, my net operating income. And it just gets complicated. So stop. Let's make this simple for you. That's what I want to do for you, is make things as simple as possible. So we're going to use a rent multiplier formula instead of cap rate. And this will help you to see if your property is going to cash flow. Now, if you look back a year ago, we've got the low point in this orange line that shows our mortgage rate was about 2.7%. Now, to illustrate the exact rule that we want, that your cap rate or your rental profit rate needs to be 2 points higher than your mortgage rate, we can see when the mortgage rates were 2.7% in 2021, we had almost diametrically straight on the line a 4.7% cap rate. That's showing that your mortgage costs are low, so your cap rate can be low. But now that mortgage rates are going up, the cap rate's got to go up. Now, you've probably heard the general 1% rule when it comes to rental property. And what the 1% rule is that if you have a $200,000 house, your monthly rent should be 1% of the value, which would mean $2,000 or greater. Now, anytime you can find a property in that rule, you are looking at a pretty solid rental property. But in these lower mortgage rates, that's obviously got lower. And there was a season where you could do 0.5%, 0.5. That means that $200,000 house needed to make at least $1,000 a month rent. When you had mortgage rates down in the low 2s, you could do that and still cash flow. But you can't do that now with a 6% cap rate. So we're going to use 0.8% as our multiplier. So let's take a look at how that works. If I have a $200,000 house, I want to multiply that times 0.8%. And that tells me I've got to have rents of $1,600 or better. So if I've got a 6% mortgage, I use 8% as my multiplier. My rents need to be $1,600 or better. So if I'm looking at that property and the average rents are $1,600 a month or better, well, that might be worth a deeper look, because this one will probably cash flow. Now, if I looked at that $200,000 property and I saw the market rents were $1,800 a month, well, that's even better, because now I've got more than an 8% multiplier, which tells me I'm probably going to have some good income on that. If I do that backwards, if I know my rents are $1,600, I'm going to take my $1,600 a month rent and I'm going to divide that times 0.8%. And that tells me $200,000 is the max I can pay for that. So if I buy that house at anything less than $200,000, I'm looking at cash flow. So use the multiplier at least 2 times higher than your cap rate, and you'll be able to get there. Say, for example, mortgage rates continue to go up, and now we hit a 7% mortgage rate. Now I want a 9% cap rate or a 9% multiplier. How that's going to work is if I take that same $1,600 a month rent and I divide that by 0.9%, I now can pay about $178,000 for that house instead of $200,000. So yes, your mortgage rates going up is going to impact the affordability and the cash flow ability of your property. But if you use this simple formula and make sure that whatever rate you're looking to cash flow is at least 2 points higher than your mortgage rate, then you're probably going to make some pretty safe investments. Remember, rental property is all about income. So if you don't have income, you should never buy that rental property. I'm Troy with IGC, a real estate investment firm. If there's anything we can do to help you with your processes, please give us a call. But hopefully you can take and use this information, whether it's in our market, your market, or any other market you might be shopping in. I want you to make sure that any rental property you buy gives you positive cash flow that can weather any economic storm.